Good morning. Today's first reading comes from 2 Samuel 18, verses 9 through 10, 14b, 24 to 25a, and 30 through 19, verse 3. Absalom unexpectedly came up against David's servants. He was mounted on a mule, and as the mule passed under the branches of a large terebinth, his hair caught fast in the tree. He hung between heaven and earth, while the mule he had been riding ran off. Someone saw this and reported it to Joab, that he had seen Absalom hanging from a terebinth, and taking 3 pikes in hand, he thrust for the heart of Absalom, still hanging from the tree alive. Now David was sitting between the 2 gates, and a lookout went up to the roof of the gate above the city, where he looked about and saw a man running alone. The lookout shouted to inform the king, who said, "If he is alone, he has good news to report." The king said, "Step aside and remain in attendance here." So he stepped aside and remained there. When the Cushite messenger came in, he said, "Let my lord the king receive the good news, that this day the Lord has taken your part, freeing you from the grasp of all who rebelled against you." But the king asked the Cushite, "Is young Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of my lord the king and all who rebel against you with evil intent be as that young man." The king was shaken and went up to a room over the city gate to weep. He said as he wept, "My son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Absalom, my son, my son." Joab was told that the king was weeping and mourning for Absalom, and that day's victory turned into mourning for the whole army when they heard that the king was grieving for his son. And that is the word of the Lord. Our gospel reading comes today from Mark 5:21. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials, named Jairus, came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hands on her, that she might get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors and had spent all that she had, yet she was not helped but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother, and those who were with him, and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know of this, and said that she should be given something to eat. And that is the gospel of the Lord. Brothers and sisters, I'd like to share with you the following reflection, and of course I paraphrase because it's very long, that comes from RainhamChristi.com. Lord, who should I turn to but you? My faith tells me there is nothing better than your plan. My hope is to be closer to you and to bring you to other people. My love wants to be fuller and better like yours, Lord. Father, grant me the grace and trust to have a greater trust, a greater faith, especially when things get harder. When problems go on for a time or are insanely intense, like the woman with the hemorrhages, we can mistakenly give up on God, think He doesn't hear us, or care, feel abandoned or forgotten. But He never leaves us. He is working in you always for your highest good, creating a way for you to experience Him anew and to draw closer to Him and experience Him on a whole new level. And our tenacity, our walk in hope, enables Him to bring about greater fruits of holiness. Many that day revered themselves as close to Christ, who walked with Him. Many were singing His praises and serving Him, but only one touched Him and got His full attention. We may ask ourselves why. Only one made an act of unconditional faith. So how can we get His undivided attention? None are closer than those who trust in Him. Pray believing. The woman touched Him and had no doubt in His power, and with a great faith and openness to whatever would be Christ's response. Those who suffer and painstakingly keep their eyes on Jesus and walk in trust and faith in His plan for their lives experience new levels of union with Christ. Lord, help us to use hardships to draw closer to you. Open my heart to seek you on your terms. Help me, Lord, to recognize you in the difficulties of each day. Keep your eyes on the kingdom and have a great day, everybody. Hi, Mom. Hi, Amanda. Hi, Joanne.